we're going to get started. And appreciate everyone for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen. I'm Tim Kenny, and we're going to give you an introduction to estate planning. The space is so wide, there's so much that we could talk about today. We're going to try and cover a lot in 30 minutes and have some time afterwards for your questions, and then also some reflections from my father, Dennis Kenny, the founder of the firm on estate planning. So with that, I'm going to jump in. So this is meant to be an introduction. And before I dive into the slides, I think it would be wise to take a minute if everyone can kind of prepare for this content, just by closing your eyes for a few seconds and taking 3 very deep breaths. All right. Well, the reason I'm starting with that is when you're approaching estate planning, I want you to think about approaching it from a point of love instead of fear. And I think most of the clients that I've experienced working with on estate planning have approached it from fear. Well, what if I die? You know, I mean, and there isn't obviously an element of that, but the other side of it is you're doing the work to make sure that your wishes are carried out when you're not around, or capable of making sure that they are. So, legal disclaimer, we've made every effort to provide accurate information. You're welcome to use this information, share it with friends, family, colleagues, but just let us know. And so today's agenda, we're going to go over estate planning basics, reasons estate planning is necessary, what does an estate plan do, who's involved in an estate plan, last will and testament, statement of desires, advanced healthcare directives, 4 different types of powers of attorney, estate planning ownership and funding, minor children and adult children with disabilities. We're going to cover why you use a trust and look at sample estate planning support project by Kenny and Kenny. And then we're going to have some time for my father to share some information on his experiences over the years and a few key points. So the basics of why you're doing an estate plan. So you determine or have an influence on what happens to your property on death, looking after the financial well-being of your family, and the degree to which probate can be avoided. For those of you that are new to this, probate is a legal court where you're deciding what happens to your assets and your loved ones. And then how to eliminate and then looking at eliminating or minimizing estate taxes, although with the new tax bill, those limits were put into effect, so we didn't see a reduction like we thought we might. And then choosing guardians for your minor children in the event of your passing. So if you've got a business, your estate plan would include business succession planning. Again, looking to identify guardians for your minor children so that they're brought up the way that you would want them to, with if you're not here to do that, and direct assets based on your wishes. This is an important aspect of it, is just by putting an estate plan in place, you're ensuring that your wishes are carried out if you're not around to make sure that they are. And then avoid legal battles. Legal battles are very expensive. And then tax efficiency, which is one of our main focuses. How do those assets transfer at your death with minimal to no additional tax? In addition to the income taxes, capital gain taxes that you've paid during your lifetime. And then if you've been gifting assets to friends, family, are gift tax returns necessary? Just one note on that. If you've got plenty of wealth, you may want to start gifting while you're around to see others enjoy those gifts. What does an estate plan do? I think most times people are thinking of estate plans with the financial space, but more important to you is what happens if you're not capable, if you're incapacitated, what happens with certain issues, and we'll get into that specifically with your healthcare. I've got my first child heading off to college, and about an hour before this meeting, my wife said, "Hey, should we get some healthcare documents for Max before he heads off?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, yes." So these are things that come up in an estate plan that are really vital. Taking care of or providing for your loved ones when you're not around, especially if you're the main breadwinner, and then choosing the people you want to work with and naming the beneficiaries or who gets what. Avoiding unnecessary debts or administrative delays. If there's no estate plan in place, then the court comes in to play, and that is a long, drawn-out, expensive endeavor. And then bridging the gap between your lifetime goals and your goals after your death. Gifts to charities, developing a legacy, protecting assets for the unknown. And then again, making sure that your wishes are a part of what happens to your loved ones, as well as the assets that you've worked so hard in your life to build up. Who's involved? Your professional advisors include an attorney, CPA, financial advisor, insurance representative. We're not attorneys. We will help out, supporting our clients on working with their attorneys, and we've done that for a number of years on executing their estate plans, and can be a catalyst in some respects. The financial advisor, when it comes to titling the accounts, and insurance representatives to fund any potential tax for large estates, and then protecting costs. Trusted business partners, especially in the case of a business succession plan, key employees, third parties, when you're not around as a business owner, what's happening to your business. Recipients and beneficiaries could include family, charities, friends, and our pets. We've got a couple dogs. What happens to them? So all of this is worked out in the estate plan. Fiduciaries and trustees, executors, those a lot of times are family members, trusted advisors, financial institutions, and there's a thing called a trust specialist. Sometimes the executor of the estate for financial issues isn't the same one for healthcare directives. some of the documents and terminology that comes into play are the last will and testament. And keep in mind that you're doing this while you're of sound mind. So, and that is always expressed in these documents, and enables you to control how your assets are distributed, how your children will be raised if you're not around. Again, the care of any pets you may have. And if you die without a will, your property is distributed by a court-appointed administrator according to a predetermined formula, most of the time not one that you would pick. Statement of desires. So this could be part of your last will and testament, and it helps guide your executor, includes details on financial accounts, insurance policies, credit cards, vehicle loans, mortgages, and end-of-life plans like your burial, cremation, funeral ceremonies, and organ donations. I've been the executor on an estate where the deceased created a recording, and this goes back a little ways. It was on a cassette, and we did it several times with his wishes and his desires. And I was able to play that after his passing for his family. And he felt really strongly that he wanted his wishes to be carried out, and he wanted his family members to hear it in his words. So by taking proactive action, you're able to do things like this and make sure that everything runs smoothly and with love. So living will also can include an advanced healthcare directive. That's one that if there's ever a time that you're unable to express your personal healthcare wishes, the directive or the living will would kick in and make sure that the person, mainly that you want to make those decisions, and then your wishes in relation to life support, organ donation, resuscitation, tube feeding, mechanical ventilation, dialysis, medical and surgical treatments is carried out. So you're expressing your wishes as well as identifying someone, and that may not be the person on your financial, but this is someone who you are confident would carry out your wishes if you're not able to express yourself. Next, somewhat related, are powers of attorney. There's 4 different main types. The ordinary power of attorney is valid as long as the principal is capable of acting for him or herself, and ends automatically when that principal becomes mentally incapacitated or dies. A durable power of attorney stays in force after the principal becomes mentally incapacitated and ends automatically when the principal dies or revokes the durable power of attorney. A general power of attorney allows your representatives to manage all your property and financial affairs. And then there are also specific powers of attorney that relate to something specifically like a business. Medical power of attorney is a document used to appoint someone to make medical decisions. We talked a little bit about that. These are some other names for it. And then the end of life plan, your wishes regarding who you want in charge of executing your last wishes, your death announcement, organ donation, final disposition of body. All of these things are worked out in your end of life plan. Next, ownership and funding. This is something, even that where it's a point of failure, potentially, you get the estate plan done. However, the estate isn't funded. And what that means is retitling the documents to be consistent with the estate plan that you put in place. These are all examples of documents related to assets that have titles. And then there's other miscellaneous accounts and assets to keep in mind as far as titling consistent with your estate plan. I think a lot of clients think of this one. It's kind of a poor man's trust where you're titling the account with the individual you want to inherit the funds in that account. And then there's a transfer on death account that only has benefit after you're deceased. There's some pros and cons of both of those. Give you a minute to see those. And then the pros and cons for the transfer on death. So I think the poor man's trust, that's probably a good way to think of those. And then covering your debts, even with the estate plan, it's important that you make sure that you have insurance policies to cover risks like your auto, your home, disability, life insurance, long-term care, and pet insurance. These ensure that you don't deplete the assets due to uninsured risks during your lifetime. Next, this is definitely an area where you want to operate from an area of love with your minor children and adults with disabilities. This hits home to me. I've got a son with cerebral palsy, and it's important that you have this included in your estate plan, where you're considering who's going to be the best guardian. And then if you or your spouse or both of you pass, what happens if you're divorced? All of this is addressed in an estate plan, and addressing the living expenses of your children, and any supplemental expenses, college funding, and then estate planning trusts. So why would you set up a trust? Avoiding probate. It's an efficient, less costly way to transfer assets to your beneficiaries. And think back to all of those assets that require titling. If you do set up a trust, you'd want to title them in the name of the trust. Control asset distribution. They protect your assets from creditors' lawsuits. There's some tax advantages to some of the trusts, and they address your incapacity. Here's a short list of different trusts. So it's a pretty complex area, but there's a lot of opportunity to protect your assets and make sure that your wishes happen. What you're looking at here is kind of a sample engagement that we may or may not do for certain clients. We're not attorneys, we're not drafting the documents, but we're working with our clients to make sure that they understand the documents that are being drafted and help them pull together their wishes as part of that process, and work with the attorney to get to the finish line and get the estates funded. So now I'm going to open it up, and actually I'd like to, if you want to chat any questions in, go ahead, and I'd like to turn it over to my father, Dennis Kenny, for maybe a few key points before we start taking questions. Dad? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I can't.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So, so great to see some of the faces here. Anyways, tremendous job. Very good, Tim. You covered a tremendous amount of information rapidly and informatively. My comments on this, besides that, is that the important thing of these documents is to keep yourself in the driver's seat of life. That's very important. And you do that when uh, there is some difficulty. I always think of one of my friends that his physician doctor said to him, "Well, Tom, if because you have high blood pressure, you're not taking the high blood pressure medicine. If you have a stroke and you live and you're in the bed, and I come in the room, remember, one blink of your eyes is yes, two blinks is no." So, so the thing is this is why you need to have a living will or a directive to his physicians, and or to the person that you put in charge of your health with the durable power of attorney, because that will give the physician and the person that has the durable power of attorney or healthcare proxy some direction as to what you uh, would like and wish as far as your pain medication, providing it, withholding it, artificial nutrition, and also resuscitation. So that's a very important document. Also, uh, the things that I'd like to emphasize of what you've discussed here, Tim, is the difference between just having a will, because I've had clients that just say, "I've got everything taken care of, Dennis, don't worry about it, I got a will." Well, okay, no problem. Well, what happens when someone passes away and the bank is alerted to the fact that you've passed away? Well, they freeze your accounts. So, so now if your surviving spouse or whoever needs to pay some bills, funeral expenses or whatever, uh, you have to get the lawyer to go before the court, because the only one that can go before the court for approval is an attorney. So now we have the court involved and you have court costs, and that could all be avoided. And also the legal fees could be avoided or minimized if you had a trust, because the trust is really pretty much mirrors a will. So that's a very important aspect of this that's is to be recognized. And so it's important to have a pour over will, what you've and a living trust or a grantor trust. And that's simply just a revocable trust. That means you can revoke whatever you put in there every day of the week if you'd like. So you can change it, no problem, until it becomes irrevocable, and that's upon death or incapacitated, and your successor trustee steps into your shoes. So those are very important things to be recognized. And just like you said, Tim, come from love. Because really what estate planning or family planning is all about is protecting your loved ones and yourself, so that uh, if some of these triggering events or unexpected events of life, that you have a stroke or you're in an automobile accident and can't communicate, and then you have to have someone that's going to step into your shoes and also have in place your wishes, so that whatever you really would like to see done will be fulfilled. So the estate planning is a very important thing to keep yourself in the driver's seat. And you do that by putting in place the documents that are necessary to achieve that if you're not able to do that. So these are the things that jump out at me. And it's a complicated subject, and I think of also what's really important to me that I've learned in life is, who do you trust and what's the truth? I mean, this kind of is something that's really important. So sometimes you can have professionals that will do the best thing for themselves, not necessarily their client. So you have to have a trusted advisor that'll be looking out for you and your better half. And as far as the tax law, it's something I haven't been involved in taxes in quite a while, but I did happen to look up what the current change in event with this new tax law that just passed. And the applicable exclusion amount for federal taxes has changed from 13,610,000 to 13,990,000. Well, I don't think most people are going to be concerned about that, but they should be concerned about the state tax, like the state of Illinois. In Florida, there is no state tax. So the important thing is it's not just about the money, it's about the love and caring for your loved ones, and then also yourself. Don't forget yourself. So put these documents in place to make your wishes happen. So that's my 2 cents in this matter.
Thanks, Dad. We've got one question, high level. Does having your assets in trust help more of your money get to your family versus going to taxes? Can they still use funds that are left in trust as they choose? So I'll start, Dad, and then you can jump in and add your 2 cents. But I think, with the current exemptions, taxes don't come into play as much. Now, related to taxes, though, you have to consider also state taxes because those exemptions are generally different than the federal. So it can be helpful because at death you get a step up in basis. So the gifting and trust planning go hand in hand. And as far as access to the funds, that's determined in your trust document. You're adding details on how they would use that. Dad, anything else to add to that?
Well, yeah. So the state of Illinois tax, or any particular state, you have to look into what the tax law is of that particular state, because most people would not be subject to the federal tax because the exclusion amount is so high. But the thing is it's also important, like for a trust, if you're concerned about disclosure of your financial affairs, if you have it in a trust, it's not going to be public knowledge. But if you go through probate with just a will, that's public knowledge. That's one thing that's important also to some people. And what was the other thing I was thinking of? So with a trust, what's really important is the assets that are in the trust are immediately available to the successor trustee. So that's really important. You don't have to wait to have a lawyer go before the court and get approval from the court to allow you to open up an estate checking account or whatever and have funds available to the surviving spouse or whoever. So that's a very important thing. And also with a trust, you can have professional management of the investments you have. So sometimes individuals don't have the expertise or the inclination to invest the monies that are there. So there's a lot of advantages of having a trust for the families. And I highly recommend having a pour over will in conjunction with a living trust or a grantor trust. In other words, an irrevocable trust. And you can, and also if you become incapacitated right away, that successor trustee can step into your shoes. So that's really important. So
those are great points. We've got one other question related to estate. So if you'd like to leave money to organizations only if your estate is greater than the amount you want to leave to family. What's the best way to word that in estate trust documents? We can't know in advance how much our kids will need 20 years down the road. Don't want to leave a lot to an organization and shortchange my child. So, we're not attorneys, so we're not wording trust documents, but what I've seen that's effective is sometimes, having succeeding beneficiaries, depending on, whether there's assets left over, like a prioritizing beneficiaries. Dad, anything to add on that?
Well, I think that's good advice. Really, an attorney should address that, but also what's real important too, and you did touch on that, and that is beneficiary designations for IRA accounts, 401ks, pension plans, da. And to make sure that you've got that it's up to date, because sometimes I've seen in the past where people have gone through a divorce and they forgot to take off their ex or the beneficiary. So that kind of changes everything as far as those accounts are concerned. So
Definitely. Well, we're over time. Feel free to exit. We're gonna have the recording on our website in short order. But we can stick around and answer some other questions if you've got them. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. That's the whole point of doing these webinars, is we want to help you get your financial ducks in a row.